Hi guys. I wanted to talk a little bit, and this is another example of why paying attention to the smaller details or the small links in the chain can affect the whole chain or the whole use of your body. So today I want to look at really small, what seems like a really small part, but it's calluses, especially in the hand. And so I want to check, see if I can come a little closer so you can see this. Now, see how I tend to have some pretty big calluses on the outside, like the last 3 fingers of my hand, but very little callus in this inner palm through the forefinger and the thumb, right? So why would that be? I do a lot of hanging from bars, and I also do a lot of stuff with my hands on the ground. But what it's showing is that I'm putting a lot of pressure out here and very little pressure in here to the inside of the hand. Why would that be? Well, partly that's going to be because of how much stretch I might have available to me, how much mobility I might have available to me in my hand itself. And also what's going on, it will affect, it is determining, or let's say it is an indicator of what's happening in my wrist and all the way up through the shoulder and neck even. So let's say if I put my hand on the ground, when I put my hand on the ground, what it's showing is that I tend to be leaning a little bit to the outside of my hand. Let's see, you might see it better from this direction. I'm actually leaning a little bit to the outside of my hand in the middle to the pinky finger there, not putting enough pressure inside. And the reason that matters is because that means I'm putting a lot of pressure into the outside of my wrist. And when you do that, that is sort of a red flag that might cause wrist injuries and other such things of that nature. So, and it's going to affect how I use my shoulder, how I use my neck. Same thing as when I'm hanging from a bar, I'm kind of leaning to the outside there. And it's probably because, well, there's a number of different reasons, but we want to start to think of then, how do we even that out? So I may have to stretch my hand more to be able to get my thumb out, and I might have to start to find more stretches through the wrists, all the way up to the shoulder. What I want to look at today is just a couple simple wrist and thumb stretches that you can play with to help even that out. So what I'm going to start with is this, I'm going to take my hand and do what they call like the hiker position. I'm just going to close my thumb, my fingers into a fist with my thumb up. I want to make sure my elbow is going straight forward, and then I'm going to just wrap my other hand around that thumb pretty low down to the base knuckle there, because I want to get this joint all the way down at the base of the wrist to get some mobility as well. I'm going to turn this way so you can see it a little bit better. I'm going to grab onto that thumb, elbow straight forward, or the forearm straight forward, and I'm going to start to just pull that thumb back a little bit. Now, I want to be mindful that I don't hinge at the wrist for this one, because I really want to get into this joint. I want to start to pull back in the thumb and just keep that elbow straight forward, or the elbow and the forearm straight forward. And then as I do that and I hang out there for a little bit, you'll start to get this nice little stretch right through that palm. And you can even start to move that thumb around in some different angles, like this is that old video game Atari joystick sort of thing for those of us who grew up in that era. Finding some stretch to the hand. It's a beautiful stretch there. Feels really great. And then, so next one, and I would do that for about a minute or so and do it on each side, of course. And so the next one is this, and this is a little bit more for the wrist. I love this one, is I'm going to take my thumb and I'm actually going to close it inside the hand and close my fingers over the thumb. You never want to punch anybody like this, you'll break your thumb. But this is a great stretch. I'm going to do it with both hands at the same time. And so I'm going to hold my thumbs like that, and then I'm going to just take my wrist and I'm going to try to cock my wrist or extend my wrist downward. See that motion? I'm going to go downward there to pull this line here through the inner wrist into the thumb. Hang out there and see how that feels. Again, it matters where your arms are because that changes the tension all the way up. So you want to keep the elbow straight forward. Hang out there for a little while. Whew. Here's another one, is now I'm going to take my hand, I'm going to bend my elbow a little bit, so my hand's up and I'm going to let my fingers dangle. I'm going to grab my thumb and I'm going to pull it under and across towards my pinky finger. So I get this more stretch throughout here. Feel what that's like for a little while. Do that on both sides. And the last one, so these are not 4 really quick ones here, is to close your fingers, and this time take your thumb over the pointer finger. And that's important. You want to keep your pointer finger connected to the base of your palm. And then put your knuckles together and roll the wrist down, palms down, and try to bring the back of the wrist together. So you notice how my shoulders and elbows want to lift a lot in that. Eventually I want to create the mobility enough so that I can let my shoulders relax, my elbows drop, and keep the back of the wrist together. Really great one. So there's 4 different little exercises you can do just to create a little more mobility there. So pulling your thumb back, kind of like a little hitchhiker there, tucking your thumb in and extending your wrist down. Nice. Putting your thumb over, drawing the elbows down, or the wrist down together, and the other one of just pulling your thumb across. Then bring your hands back to the floor and see how much you can get that inner palm flatter to the ground. And it's nice to move and wiggle and roll around and try to find some different rotations through the wrists. And this is very helpful because a lot of this stuff, in an exercise context, if you're hanging from a bar, you'll be able to get your whole hand working for you, and therefore even your whole arm. Exercise, like say you're doing yoga, downward dogs, it's really helpful to protect the wrist to keep the whole palm down. But even if you just have to come to the ground, do some work on the floor, clean your floors, whatever you need to do, or more importantly, if you end up falling onto the ground, you don't want to end up on the outer wrist doing that, because that's going to create a lot of impact force. The more you can get the whole palm to support you, the less chance you'll have of injury. So great little wrist stretches. Hope you get to play with those, and pay attention to the small little details on parts. It's going to affect the whole. Calluses, really good way to determine that. So start to think of calluses as your friend, actually. They're good learning tools. Okay, see you next time, and have a good week.